Two legends who did the impossible in the Ragnarok tournament. The Chinese king who flexed on the Greek gods, defeated a demon god without a Valkyrie, and then the most respected deity in Valhalla, the ruler of Helheim, Hades, which put humanity in their first ever lead in the tournament. No god thought it was possible. The supreme ruler pulled up on Valhalla to get revenge for his fallen brother Poseidon after Hercules had already failed, and still could not stop the might of Huang's overpowered set of abilities and the might of humanity. On the other hand, the mad lad Buddha literally changed the entire story, switching sides to face the gods instead after previously clashing with the likes of Loki, shitting on the lucky gods, interacting with Zeus directly, and then managed to defeat Zero Fuku in the tournament alongside Hajun, also known as Papias in the anime, a demon lord who wielded a direct counter to the Enlightened One. However, that did not stop this mad lad. He managed to defeat him as well and tie up the scores in the Ragnarok tournament. But bro doesn't stop there. After claiming that legendary victory, he gets his close friend Kintoki to look into the dragon slaying hero Siegfried, someone who is later revealed to be Brunhilde's boyfriend, the vessel for Odin resurrecting the primordial gods, and one of the most important characters for the entire tournament existing in the first place, which results in Buddha clashing with Odin himself, alongside potentially teaming up with Beelzebub, with likely many more things to occur in the future, as right now in the Ragnarok manga, his close friend and ally Kintoki, someone who's pretty much a rival of Buddha, is fighting the main villain of the Ragnarok story, Odin. With it being set up, there's going to be a post-Ragnarok war of some kind, where Buddha is likely to fight again. But coming back to today's video, we have a matchup between two fan favorite characters, where I'll be revealing and breaking down how strong both of them are, and which one would truly win if they face one another in the Ragnarok tournament. Subscribe here, Mysterious Weeb, for all the Ragnarok content you need. There's a lot of videos on the channel for you to enjoy, and let's get into it. His endless aura occurs right away. The Valkyrie Brunhilde is initially shocked to see that Hades is the next fighter, likely due to him not appearing on the original roster, but locks in right away and claims there is one who can fight him, a ruler for a ruler, selecting Huang without hesitation. And guess how we see him for the first time. An explosion occurs, bro is walking through walls and finds himself approaching the VIP section when looking for his room. The location where the Greek gods have been watching the rounds, walking right past the likes of Hermes and Ares to take his throne. The same spot the likes of Zeus and Hades had been sitting previously, chief gods in Ragnarok. Therefore, as expected, this left the two Greek gods confused, and Ares trying to get the Chinese man to move, resulting in instant humiliation. Something impressive when you consider that the god of war was able to see these attacks from Zeus previously in the tournament, and shouldn't really be considered a fodder god compared to the many nameless ones out there. Regardless, the Emperor's greatness continues, telling the gods to humble themselves as they're in the presence of an emperor, and the throne is where he is. The complete introduction of the King of Kings. Now when moving forward, the humiliation of Ares continues, and bro even has Hermes serving him drinks, taking control of this VIP room until the Valkyries pull up looking for him, as he was just chosen to fight for humanity next. Huang's just like, the road is where I lead. Remember before when he was walking through walls? That was his road. But once Brunhilde revealed to him that he's fighting for round 7, he locked in right away and was ready to go, making his way to the arena. Unlike any other fighter, once again, the road is where I lead, which indeed occurs right away, a truly respected king, which is exactly what his opponent Hades represents in the series. the most trustworthy or god the others rely on the most, demonstrated in his flashback where he faced all of the escaping titans during the battle between the Greek gods and the primordial goddess Gaia, with the likes of Zeus, Poseidon and the other Olympians dealing with the giants, while Hades alone defeated the titans without even requesting help, a feat that resulted in even the likes of Poseidon to respect him. Another god who has large groups in the community arguing him as either one of the strongest or mid-range fighters, but his narrative for a god is one of the best in Ragnarok. For example, right as it's revealed that Poseidon is the round 3 fighter for the gods, we have the claim that he's a top tier fighter, having Brunhilde freak out when deciding who can defeat him, considering Leonidas, Huang and Nostradamus. When you have a look at the statements from various characters and the narrative, for Poseidon we have him being considered the Zeus of the seas, another direct comparison to Zeus and the claim that he's the most fearsome god. This gets some later clarification as it's referring to the gods of Olympus, which of course includes Hades, who even claims himself that Poseidon is the god most worthy to have the title of king. Pretty wild stuff. Alongside this, we get a future flashback later on in Record of Ragnarok alongside Beelzebub, another overpowered god, who was defeated by Hades and gifted this divine weapon, resulting in the Satan equivalent in the story to have so much respect for the god that he viewed it as impossible to think Hades would lose. Therefore, it's time to highlight the greatness of this mad lad. Huang's Valkyrie transformed into this armor, which specializes in defense and maximizes the potential of his martial art. Additionally, she can recast into this sword, dedicating her power into offense rather than defense. Therefore, his martial art goes by the name Qi Yu and involves various forms, those being armor, spear, crossbow, halberd and sword, having unique techniques with each and the ability to combine them if needed, or at least 2 from what we've seen. The armor form is known as Heavenly Hand of Defense and allows him to block attacks by absorbing the energy of his opponent, and he can even redirect this back. Spear form is pretty much a powerful stab capable of harming Hades. Likewise for the halberd form, which I guess does even more damage, but the crossbow path is far more interesting. When his blindfold is removed, Huang has the ability to see the flow of ki of people, illustrated with these various points called stars, and when these points are hit, it weakens his opponent greatly. The crossbow form involves Huang using his breath to hit these points. Just take the outline from Sasaki in the series. The crucial point here being that even techniques with the potential to kill can have their power weakened just by breathing on them. These are invisible attacks claimed as unavoidable, and one does not know when they have been hit. Pretty wild stuff. Then his sword form, which is most likely his strongest AP wise, which can also be used to perform Heavenly Hand of Defense as its base, a deadly combo that allowed Huang to defeat a amped up Hades. But let's have a closer look at the things he did throughout his battle. Huang gives Hades the chance to attack first with his thrust, one that was meant to kill. However, the Chinese emperor dodges it slightly alongside all of the follow-ups. However, the power behind the god's attacks are so much that the wind coming from them is powerful enough to wound the king. You cannot simply dodge Hades here. Thus, Huang takes the next attack head on, a named one on top of that. Everyone watching should know why that's important. But the Mad Lad counters the strike with this combo, alongside deflecting it back directly at the god, sending Hades flying. But now Hades is trying a different type of attack, one with all of his might and from above, naturally resulting in the armor form to be used, which seems to save the king at first, but Hades is not done. He unleashes all of his force in an attempt to crush the human, successfully dealing major damage, marking the sign of the real fight beginning, and results in the emperor being in a similar situation as before, resulting in the use and reveal of his next key ability, the air bubble he blows at the god that seemingly stops the overwhelming strength coming from Hades and allows him to use the armor form to counter. However, the intensity is here right now with a follow-up, counter, and dodge with something strange occurring. Huang, upon looking at the wound on Hades, seemingly gets damaged himself, shaking off the pain to continue and landing another air bubble into a combo, this time the spear form with a direct strike doing considerable damage. Pretty overpowered, as many of you are probably realizing, but something so broken for a human results in a huge downside. This eye-based ability Huang wields also results in him receiving the same pain that he sees, explaining the blindfold at the start and further respect for this mad lad during this fight. He knows the pain of others, as such he is the greatest king, but this also means that during all the times of war and death when he was alive, Huang suffered unimaginable pain seeing people die all around him, resulting in him simply being built different now. Now once the fight gets going, we see Hades now counter the air bubble attack and land close enough that the wind impact does damage with his swings, alongside a knee landing that sets up Huang to take a major blow, but the king managed to land an air bubble once again, bringing out his halberd form with this kick, an attack that was blocked but still did decent damage to Hades, the Greek ruler, a showing that has him fully accept Huang as a worthy king, and to respond, he unleashes his blood. Pretty much this god's transformation that features his weapon feasting on the god's blood, revealing that it's indeed alive and growing even more powerful, but this also is limited as it's absorbing the life force of Hades, meaning the longer it occurs, the more chance Hades is going to die. But with that said, since Hades damages himself here, the pain is also inflicted on Huang, who watched it directly, something you cannot forget about when considering what's going on in this fight. But now, due to the blood surrounding Hades, he can counter the air bubble in a more reliable manner, alongside the power increase being so great that Huang's heavily handled defense has no chance of working, suffering a major blow from the god. His arm seems to be destroyed. He must give everything alongside his Valkyrie for a chance to win now. Therefore, she transforms into a sword, revealing that this Valkyrie's unique ability is called Host Guard. The greatest defense is also offense. The final stage of the fight is here, where we see the Qi Yu sword slash against the insane strike from the amped up god, a clash that was not close. Hades won and sliced off the human's entire arm, something that would have most others defeated by this point, but as the Chinese king lays there, he claims it's beautiful, the star he sees, and locks back in with one arm. Hades begins to unleash the very same attack, the one that just dominated this human, with everything he has left for the purpose of claiming victory. Guess what this Giga Mad Lad does? He uses the armor form heavily handled defense with his sword as it clashes with Hades, buying him enough time to unleash the air bubble in the middle of the exchange, landing it on the weapon of Hades, something that previously established is technically alive, therefore it can be weakened by hitting its crux of power, now sending all the power back with his armor form, destroying the god's divine weapon, leaving every other god and human watching stunned, and finishing the greatly respected Hades with a follow-up slash, winning round 7 of Record of Ragnarok for humanity, putting them in their first ever lead, alongside hitting that glorious victory pose like a true mad lad. And unfortunately, still many years after this fight concluded, Huang has not returned to the Record of Ragnarok story. The last time we saw him, he was in this state, and that remains. Of course, he's still alive and will likely make his grand return at some point, perhaps in the post-Ragnarok war if that does occur, But at the current point, this is all the information and feats we've gotten from him in the story, which highlights that the Chinese king is an absolute monster, and him managing to defeat Hades, regardless of some slight advantages he had throughout the battle, is without a doubt more impressive than Buddha's victory over Hejun. However, do not sleep on the Enlightened One, who I'm breaking down right now. A go-to character that probably has the biggest fan base in Record of Ragnarok now, naturally resulting in a lot of haters to spawn alongside that. But as a fan myself, I'll be unbiased and objective with what the story has provided for the Enlightened One. Buddha's 6-round staff is something that transforms in accordance with Buddha's emotions. These include a halberd for more mid-range and piercing attacks, a club for powerful close-range strikes that almost one-shot zero, a mini sword that's labelled as indestructible, a shield capable of easily blocking an attack like this, and a scythe which is his most powerful with potential one-shot attacks if they land directly. All of this provides Buddha with an answer to various situations. However, as many of you know, this staff was destroyed during his fight with Hejun, so you might be able to say this isn't a factor anymore, but this is not his most important ability. Buddha's pure enlightenment 8th consciousness, resulting in his future sight technique. This allows him to see the soul of every living creature in the form of this light, and in the world of Record of Ragnarok, the soul moves before the body. As such, Buddha technically should always see and know what his opponent is going to do. Some people argue about the extent of this ability. For what we know, he can see a moment ahead, which could mean quite a while or just a few seconds. Regardless, seeing into the future is quite the overpowered ability. It seems like Buddha is always aware of the next attack from Zero, likewise from Hejun when it begins working on him later in the fight. As during the clashes where Buddha was being beat up, the future sight ability no longer worked due to Hejun's darkness, something that for what we know so far is only unique to him, and was overcame by Buddha when he put fear into the demon god, dominating Hejun the second he got it back. However, this aspect has not stopped people from clowning on Buddha's speed, for example, claiming that he is a slow god and will get blitzed by many of the others. Some will bring up the candy scene between Zeus and himself, where the Enlightened One was able to prevent the Supreme God, the fastest character in the series, from touching them. But since this video is only talking about inverse scaling and speed outside of specific techniques isn't really known, at least between the various gods, it's hard to say for certain with many of these things. You can even look at Buddha's recent exchanges with Odin to provide more understanding, where after enraging the chief god, he was able to dodge the first attack with his future sight and showed that he was ready to fight without a weapon at all. But that's where Beelzebub came in. So this little exchange, based on Odin's perceived strength by the fandom, was very good for Buddha and highlights again how strong his future sight ability really is. We also have his transformation or fusion with Zero, which connects to Buddha's ability to entrust one's fate to another, where they can draw out the limits of their power, allowing Buddha to perform a volume with the remains of this weapon, or with Zero himself, creating this sword, something stated as the ultimate divine weapon, and in the context of the fight, it may very well be. Furthermore, when it comes to current Buddha, we see that he still has this weapon, at least the base of it, before the sword volume or transformation, that he uses to whack Beelzebub and state, "I promised him that we'd walk the path of light together," meaning I do think it's possible that Buddha could enter this transformation again, but it's still unknown for now. We also got the huge statement from Beelzebub about Buddha that makes him seem even stronger, calling Buddha the most bothersome fellow and to come kill him, Beelzebub's ultimate goal, and states that perhaps Buddha will be the one, highlighting that he thinks Buddha is capable of such. Therefore, with all of this said, Buddha, based on the narrative in Record of Ragnarok, is without a doubt a top tier god, and is someone when it comes to power ranking tier list that I rank quite a bit above Huang. However, at the end of the day, this is Record of Ragnarok we're talking about, with there being arguments available that every participant in the tournament could actually be relative to one another, or the gaps aren't as big as people would initially assume. It's just from a reader's perspective, certain characters have more overpowered abilities, such as with Buddha's future sight. When it comes to his regular self that participated in the tournament at the start with his transforming staff, that is somewhat similar to Huang's set of abilities. However, I would argue the Chinese Emperor is more complete with that aspect. However, the Enlightened One's 8th consciousness gives him the biggest advantage in most clashes, particularly against someone like Huang, who more so relies on catching people off guard, particularly with his air bubbles, something Buddha will know is coming and will know he's going to get impacted by such a thing. Something unique to him and an absolute advantage he has over Huang. So I will say anything could really happen in a clash between these two, but due to Buddha's future sight, I would argue he's more favourable to win the fight. And if you were to say it's current Buddha with the eye patch, potentially still able to use the volume with 0 or reactivate that sword, and may very well be more in his favour due to the statements we got about that weapon. A god wielding another god as a weapon is pretty much the situation there, quite insane, and should technically be stronger than anything Huang revealed. However, don't completely disregard the Chinese king. Bro could combine insane techniques together, similar to how he defeated Hades. But for the sake of today's video, I will be giving Buddha the victory and do recognize him as the stronger one in its entirety, alongside the narrative at the current point in Ragnarok being more in his favour, particularly with Kentoki likely to have a very close fight with Odin. But I highly recommend checking out this Beelzebub vs Hades video, or maybe this Apollo vs Simo vs battle, or if you're a true mad lad, the Leonidas vs Hercules one as well. But that's it guys, peace.